You have the situation going on with the Dallas Mavericks and Mark Cuban, that extensive investigation of the workplace culture for the Dallas Mavericks. Quite honestly, Commissioner, a lot of people asking why the league, as you saw more of this come out in the investigation where Mark Cuban knew of and he was emailing and part of some of the things that were happening here, why more wasn't done to him by the league?
Well, Mike, I would just say, your use of part of, we oversaw a 7-month independent investigation, and what came out was that Mark was not directly involved.
I didn't mean part of. You're absolutely right.
But I'm just saying that. But understandably, he's the owner of the organization, so I can understand people's reaction. And I'll say what we took into account. One was that the moment Mark saw that Sports Illustrated article, he called the league office. He said, "At your disposal, complete cooperation in every possible way." He handed over every email, not just of his, but of his organizations. The investigators looked at 1.6 million documents. 215 people were interviewed, current employees, former employees. Mark was interviewed. So number one, I think the level of cooperation. And again, number two, they didn't find that he was directly involved. And I'd say number three was his response. Of course, while my fining authority is limited to $2.5 million, Mark agreed to pay $10 million into a fund to support women in sports and equality in the workplace. So I think it's one of those things for the league office. For me, you look at all the factors together, and I think I heavily weighed his cooperation, and I heavily weighed the fact that he wasn't directly involved in the activity. Having said that, it's what the report pointed out, and it's online. Complete transparency too there in terms of what the findings were. It's terrible. What they uncovered is terrible in the workplace. It's terrible for the women there. It's terrible for the culture of the men who work there as well. And I think if anything, it's an opportunity for this league to double down, in essence, on ensuring that we have discriminatory-free workplaces. And we sent lots of memos out to all our teams on best practices. And, lastly, I should add in terms of Mark Cuban that the moment this came out, within a few days, he had hired this woman, Cynthia Marshall from AT&T, former AT&T senior executive, as his CEO. He handed over the business side of the organization to her. The league office has been working closely with her. So, these things, it's the least favorite part of my job when I'm meting out discipline. But I'd say taking into account all the factors, I think we addressed it in the right way.
And we'll see what happens with the Mavericks going forward with that new business model in place. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver here with us on Golic and Wingo. One of the things that has been a real strength of the league, Commissioner, has been that you have a real partnership with the players. The players feel very much like you guys are in this together working for a common goal. But with a lot of that power, sometimes comes players trying to dictate terms. And what we have going on with Jimmy Butler and the Minnesota Timberwolves right before the start of the season seems very unusual with the way he's trying to sort of orchestrate things. What have you been keeping your eye on and how this has played out with Jimmy Butler and the Timberwolves?
I've been keeping my eye on it. And most importantly, look, we all know players have leverage, teams have leverage. And I'd say back to one of your first questions in terms of the length of contracts. So he's in the last year of his contract. So and this happens all the time in the league. You just hope it doesn't become publicly. A player has the ability to go to management and say, I don't intend to re-sign. And especially for an all-star like Jimmy, if he comes to the end of his contract and he hasn't clearly indicated what he may do, there's a good chance they'll get no value for him under our system. Contract just ends, and he's a free agent, and he signs somewhere else. So in this case, Jimmy made clear to the organization, it sounds like, I don't know that firsthand, that he was unlikely to re-sign, so get value for me while you can. Now, of course, when that becomes public, it takes all the leverage away from the team, even in terms of other NBA teams, because they now know they have to move the guy, and so they may be reluctant to offer as much value as they otherwise would. I'd say the good news here is that, and I found this to be mainly the case in our league, that Jimmy has never suggested that he's not going to comply with the terms of his contract, meaning he has a year to go with the Minnesota Timberwolves on his contract, and he's now practicing. From what I've heard, he's practicing hard, and he's committed to winning. And that's all we can ask for here. There's no doubt that a player has the ability to be disruptive. Really, all I can add is that, as you guys know from covering the sport for a long time, you could go way back, Will Chamberlain, Earl Monroe, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Great players in this league have always had leverage. And in fact, I was reminding some of my younger colleagues here, when I first got to the league, even before we had a rookie scale, we had rookies used to hold out every year. And we'd start the season with several rookies that still hadn't signed contracts. So overall, I think it's the best system we've ever had. It doesn't mean that we're not constantly looking for ways to improve it.
Adam Silver, NBA commissioner. We know your time is limited. One quick one. We saw Kevin Durant with a preseason game in Seattle with the Sonics jersey on and talking about trying to get basketball back there. What is that thought? Is that in the pipeline at all, basketball back in Seattle?
As I've said before, so I was at the league for many years when we were still in Seattle, and it's a fantastic market. The team left because they needed a new arena or they needed to rebuild Key Arena. They're in the process of doing that now. There doesn't seem to be a lot of interest from our current owners in expanding at the moment. I think that, if you think about it, one thing you didn't ask me is how come so few teams have a chance to win the championship this year? And to me, what we're most focused on is ensuring that we have 30 strong teams right now. And we still have work to go. So not only if you expand does it dilute revenue, but it dilutes talent. I think that's one thing that people don't always focus on. They hear big prices for expansion teams, but it's like selling equity. So all of our teams now that own 1/30th of the global prospects of the league, if you expanded by 2 teams, then own 1/32 of the global prospects of this league. So I love Seattle personally. I think it's a great market. They're doing all the right things in terms of building a new arena or revitalizing Key Arena. It's not on the agenda right now.